Hi, I'm Wendy Pease from Rapport International, and I am seeing more and more websites with Google Translate on it, and it can actually hurt your marketing. So I wanted to do this quick presentation to talk to you about opportunities for machine translation and risks. First off, let's start with a story. JFK famously said that crisis was translated into Chinese as danger opportunity. And it is a huge thing in leadership right now for people to talk about that and really say, it depends on how you're looking at and reframing it. Well, in reality, the Chinese characters say danger change point, which means that it can go to a positive way or a negative way. So there's a real meaning there that needs to be captured if you want a high quality translation. And if I pop it into Google Translate, it says critical machine, which is nowhere close to what the meaning is. So if you really want a good translation, this is just one example of where something can go really badly by using a machine. So there are well over 2 million websites that use the Google Translate plugin on their website, and over 500,000 of those are in the United States, and I just grimace every time I see it because yes, it's fast, it's easy, it's cheap. You put it up there and you think that you're meeting the regulation. The language seems to be right because you don't speak the language and you don't know, and it looks like it's another language, and you see all these other websites that are using it. But in reality, it's causing a problem. What it does do well is give you a gist translation. You can get an idea of what it says, of what something says. If you're good at using pattern language, so your source language is repetitive, and you're using it over and over again, then the translation that you're feeding it into, it can capture. And if you've got a high number of users that are using the same material over and over again, then using some sort of machine translation might actually be an opportunity for you. But if you're not careful, you really could risk your legal liability. Now, I have Universal Studios up here because they didn't hang a sign in Spanish on one of their dangerous rides that says, if you have a heart condition or you're pregnant, you shouldn't ride this ride. And a Spanish-speaking gentleman went on it and he had a heart attack, and eventually there was a case saying, hey, you labeled it in English. Here you are down in Florida and you're not labeling it in Spanish, let alone for any of your international visitors. So I think eventually there's going to be a case with machine translation and the Google Translate plugin that says, hey, this wasn't good quality translation. I depended on it. Okay, so why can't machines handle languages? It seems like it should so much work. I'd love to think that it could, because it would just open up the world to us to travel and do business and simplify all the communication back and forth between languages. And rather than going back and look at how language changed, I would like to capture the attention of you Star Trek fans out there and talk about an article. I just used the picture from Star Trek. I don't have copyrights on it or anything, just capturing your attention. But I do want to talk about an article that Sam Kean wrote. He's a famous science author. He's written 5 books that made it to the New York Times bestseller list. He's published in all the major publications. And he wrote this article, How Will Language Change If Humans Travel the Stars? And he said, just imagine, it takes 200 years, earthling years, to reach the destination. And it takes a message 10 years to come back. So you've got your travelers on the spaceship, and they're just about to reach their destination, and they send a message back, and it's 10 years in the making. Now you can imagine that that message might not even be understandable to the people who get it. Number one, just the time that's passed. You just think even in the last year, the words that have been added to our dictionary, like Zoom fatigue. Who would have thought a year ago that would have been something? That's actually been added to Webster. So that's one thing. I'm going to lose the numbering on these because I have them numbered differently on my notes here. But another thing is they're living in a new social situation. If I'm living here on Earth, I'm not going to have words to describe to situations that come up from living on a spaceship. I can't even imagine what they'd be. But they'd have to have new words and ways of describing some of these experiences that they're going through that nobody else was. Another thing is when a group becomes a bonded group, they start using their own languages, their own slang, their own words. Now, if you've ever raised teenagers, you know exactly what this is like. You can walk into a room full of teens and not have a clue as to what they're talking about because of the references and the shortcuts and the words that they're using. Another thing that happens over time is that people want a quick way to communicate. We say goodbye to people now. Sometimes we even say bye. We've shortened it from goodbye to bye. In Old English, the people would say, God be with you. And so that was shortened to goodbye. So it went God be with you to goodbye to now bye. Let's see, norms of communicating. So not only do you have new words and new ways of communicating, you might have the abbreviations like we see these days with BRB, TTYL, or LOL. So BRB means be right back. I've used that on Zoom meetings. Or TTYL, talk to you later. LOL is laugh out loud. So things like that will start to evolve and develop, and it will just become part of the lingual. Remember when people used to do up talk, they'd end every sentence going up, even if it wasn't a question? I can't even do it anymore. I thought it came from the Valley Girls in California, but it actually started in Australia in the 1980s. And that became so popular, it then spread to California and other parts of the world. So you had this whole group of people speaking with up talk. And then you've got lost words. Do you know the word hodad? I'd never heard of it, and I thought it was hysterical. It's from the 1960s when surfers and the Beach Boys were all popular. It's a surfer poser, so a hodad. We don't even hear that anymore. So some words would be lost, just as if you were on a spaceship and you didn't see trees and grass for a while. You might not even have words for berries or whatever it would. So Webster's adds thousands of words a year. You can go on there almost every month or every quarter and see the new words that they've added in, and they subtract the ones that become obsolete, like hodad. All right, so what we're going to do is go through 12 challenges that machines have with capturing language, and then we're going to dig specifically into the Google Translate plugin to your website. So if you're using that, you want to be aware of these. Number one challenge is English articles. We have the and and we know when to use them. Like you'd never say the money. I mean, you would say the money, you'd never say a money. And then you have languages that have feminine and masculine, and then you even have German that has a neuter, and some that don't have any articles. So this can be quite complex, particularly if you have something that goes into a plural, because how the alignments go with that. And so, for example, fish, shrimp, and quail, and I just learned this, it's very interesting. Fish, if you're talking about a group of fish that are the same species, then you wouldn't, it's one fish or three fish. But if you're talking about fish that are from a different, like I'm looking in the ocean, I see a bunch of fishes, that means fish of different species. So, you have to know that in English to be accurate. And then if you're translating into Spanish, by the article, you have to change the article and the word to pick up that. So I caught a fish in there, and I caught many fish in there, and it ended up being the same translation in Spanish. Then you've got things with multiple meanings. So think about head. You've got the body part, you've got somebody that's head of the company, or it could be I'm going to the head, like you might use on a boat. And I put that into Google for Spanish translation, and it translated as I'm going to the body part, which doesn't make sense at all. So imagine you have something like that on your website with a dual meaning, it's not going to capture it. Word order. So adjectives where they go, verbs where they go. And if you think about some of the writing that we have on complex sentences, then it can get very confusing as to how it's going to go. So you add in multiple meanings for a word, some plural, and then word order, you're really getting to be a challenge. Conjugation of verbs, we don't have as many conjugation as other languages. So I know when I've been learning other languages, you really have to understand how that happens. Oh, and here's a fun one. I swapped it up because we're about halfway through. If you've got something that has a very local meaning, like in Argentina, when you want to say, leave me alone, you'd say, anda cántale a Gardel, which literally means go sing to Gardel, which has no meaning unless you know that Gardel is a famous singer who sang salsa songs. So it has a big meaning there, but in Google Translate, it's not going to pick up the meaning at all. And then if you think about idioms, we got idioms all over the world. In the United States, we say a lot these days, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. In Nigeria, it's if life gives you peppers, make pepper soup. So here's some Canadian French ones. You know, here's a way, j'ai le feu au cul, means I'm pissed. But in Google Translate, it says my is on fire. Garbage becomes a drain, so it's going to have no meaning. Creative messaging. Now this got really interesting because the I Leche campaign, remember that, where they had a bunch of people with the milk mustache on, whoever translated it put, are you lactating? And I asked one of our Spanish translators about, how would you translate got milk? And he's got a PhD, he's very bright, he's also got a couple of masters in other disciplines. And he gave me a bunch of different ways and finally said, I need to know in context and what the meaning is they want to get across before I could actually translate that. So it's not just 2 words, it's a full meaning, a full campaign that you've got to get across. And I have lots of examples of these. Then you have the cultural meaning that doesn't get across. Mazda's tagline there for a while was Jimba Ite over in Japan. And they couldn't capture that accurately in the United States because we don't have a word or a phrase that talks about the Japanese archer warrior riding across the plain on a horse, that feeling of one. And so for here, they did have a professional, very good translator that came up with the Zoom Zoom campaign, which I love. I drive a Mazda, and I've always related to those commercials. But if I put it into Google Translate, it used to say danger, and then I think Mazda had something to say about that, and so they changed it. So now if you put it in, it says Jimba, which means nothing in English anyway. So what about interchangeable meanings? If you're in the Northeast, you call that fizzy drink soda. If you're in the Midwest, you call it pop. If you're in Atlanta, you call it a Coke. Hey, can I get you a Coke? Yes. What kind would you like? You could have a Sprite, a Dr. Pepper, a Mountain Dew, whatever you want. But down there, Coke is a general term for a fizzy drink. And soft drink could be a general term for it. But if you put that in Germany, they all have specific translations, and you need to know which word would be completely accurate for the situation that you want it in. So this goes with a lot of words. Contextual meaning. So here's one: immaculate conception versus I had such a good day yesterday because my son's room was immaculate. Completely different meanings. And if you put immaculate into Google Translate, in Russian, my son's room was irreproachable. In Hindi, my son's room was soft. In Chinese, it was flawless, maybe. In Croatian, it was impeccable. So those have like the Immaculate Conception overlay to them. So it couldn't capture that, and it wouldn't capture it in the meaning because machines aren't able to do that. And how about new meanings for words? So thirsty. shows that strong desire for attention. That stunt shows he's thirsty. Well, if you put thirsty into Google Translate, it's going to come up with, desiring something to drink, that word in the translation. Or slow walk is going to talk about the verb slowly walking, but here it's to deliberately do something to delay. So when words have new meanings or multiple meanings, any machine translation is not going to pick up on that because it can't pick up the context. Okay, so we went through the 12 issues that Google Translate just from grammar, English words. Now let's look at the plugin particularly. So I went to Oregon.gov. A lot of the government sites have the Google Translate plugin because of the requirements, the legal requirements they have for reaching people that don't speak English. So I went to their site, and you can tell from here that I scrolled all the way down to the bottom to find where the plugin was. So imagine you're on a Chinese speaking website or a Chinese website and you don't speak the language. You're never going to know to scroll all the way down to the bottom. You're going to be frustrated and you're just going to go there and you're going to say, oh, not in my language, and you're going to go away from it. So putting it down at the bottom is a complete waste of time because it's not going to get used except for people like me who are using it as an example. So then I went to the Massachusetts website and I go, okay, so they moved it up to the top. You can see over here with the scroll bar that it's at the top. Now here's the problem. I go to the language, say I speak Khmer Korean, and I even recognize the Google globe, so I know it's to select the language, and I drop it down. All the languages are in English, so I'm not going to know which one to pick. Just put yourself in that situation. All of this is in Japanese, and you don't speak Japanese, and you click it down, and all the languages are in Japanese. Again, it's going to be useless. You're not going to be able to find it. So right there with the quality issues, then you've got the problem with finding it. Now, people are more apt to stay on a website. They're over 90% more apt to stay if it's written in their own language, 72% more apt to spend more time on it, and 56% are going to spend more money if it's accurately translated into their language. So if you have a website that has Google Translate on it, you've lost them. Okay, now if you do a good navigation and you put it on there, but you've used Google to do it, it's not going to sound familiar to them for the reasons that we talked about before. You've lost them. And there's another problem with this too. If you use machine translation, particularly Google Translate, and you take those translations and you put them in on your landing page, it looks at it as duplicate content. So any sites with lots of duplicate content on it get zinged by the search engines. So you really want to stay away from this. Okay, so now we've gotten through all the problems and you think, oh, well, to translate my website, it's going to be a huge cost. Well, there is a better way to do this. And this is to think about your buyer's journey. When they come to your website, they want an easy to find navigation. Then they want to be able to pick their language out. And then if they go to their language page and you've put a landing page on there that's been professionally translated, it's simple for them to find. It's easy for them to navigate to. It's inexpensive because you're just doing a landing page. For a couple $100, you can put some accurate information up there. And then you can track metrics on it to see how many people you're attracting that speak that language. Key things to include are, a short about us, what makes you different, why us, differentiation, the products or services you're selling, maybe a contact page or a call to action, which is a CTA. If they can buy right online, all the better. You haven't even had to have any communication with them. Now, there are ways that you can communicate with people, and we can work with you on that, but this is how you want to handle your initial your translation on your website. So here's my contact information. I post a lot of information like this on LinkedIn. If you haven't found this through LinkedIn, Just search Wendy Pease, translation expert. I'll come up. You can email me. Here's our contact information, our website. If you want to go learn more, we have a whole library that we share information all the time. If we don't answer your questions there, let us know. We'll create another video or a blog. Thanks so much. I hope this helped. We'll talk to you later.